Hi, I'm Dr. Angelique Johnson, CEO and founder of MemStim and Visionarium. MemStim is a company that I founded, right? It's a tech startup I founded as a graduate student coming out of the University of Michigan. I was getting my PhD in electrical engineering. I was doing research on microelectrode arrays that were developed for cochlear implant applications. So implantable hearing aids that go inside the cochlea and indirectly stimulate the auditory nerve. I was developing this technology and I never actually intended on creating a startup and becoming an entrepreneur. I was just developing the technology because I was an inventor, like maybe you were. I was thinking publications and trying to complete my dissertation. But along the way, I thought, well, why don't I look at this whole entrepreneurship thing? And it was really just so I could inform myself about the world of entrepreneurship. But as they said, I got kind of high on my own supply. And, after pitch competitions and speaking to investors and developing the idea and even working with the Office of Technology Transfer, right, which was helpful in helping me craft and think about the commercial opportunity, I decided to found my company. And in founding this company, MemStim, I have had to engage with the Office of Technology Transfer both as an inventor and then as a startup founder, getting an option with them, and I'll talk about options later, right? And then eventually, at this point, looking at a license agreement for the technology. So I've walked through several stages, and this talk is really from the founder perspective versus what the other presentation you saw, which was more so about the nuts and bolts of what is intellectual property, what's a patent, how does the Office of Technology Transfer work and engage. I'm going to give you some insider tips from a founder perspective of things that you in particular, if you're starting a startup, or even if you're just an inventor who wants to make some money off their invention, right? You have access to royalties, even if you don't create a company yourself. Other companies can pick it up and you can get access to those royalties. So I'm going to give you some insider tips on how you can actually pitch the OTT in a very effective way to increase your chances of them filing it. And then if you are a founder, how you can negotiate access to that filing later on. So those are the things that I'm going to cover in this presentation. And the reason I'm actually doing this is because of my other company, Visionarium. When I started my first company, MemStim, it was really a solo journey to the extent that I had excellent training at the university. I went to the Zell-Lori Institute of Entrepreneurship at University of Michigan in the Raw School of Business, worked with faculty, ideated on my technology. My first investment offer came from a billionaire. I learned a lot. I was able to accomplish a lot. But one thing that you just don't learn until you do it is how to actually build a startup. Hiring employees, building out your space, generating a team, that's cohesive, that can move things forward, dealing even with, from a business perspective, with the Office of Technology Transfer. All of these things, I really had to learn through trial and error. And I created Visionarium because I didn't want anybody else to have to learn through trial and error. In many cases, especially for entrepreneurs that are underserved, or even just any entrepreneur coming to an academic institution, you may not have the strongest connections to people that have gone before you and started companies, especially if you're in the research domain. And so Visionarium is a resource both to individual entrepreneurs, particularly in the early stage setting, as well as corporate entities, universities, Fortune 500 companies that either want to have training for their internal employee base, right, on entrepreneurial methods to do new businesses, internal startups at their company, or they're looking to provide training to others, as in this video, training to their constituents, training to those that they care about and want to make sure that they are successful in what they're trying to do with their entrepreneurial endeavors. At Visionarium, we say stay vision rich, right? Because listen, you may not be a millionaire right now. Hopefully one day you will be, but I do believe if you're watching this video, you are a visionaire. That means you're vision rich, and we want to help the vision rich at Visionarium. So with that being said, let's get on to the vision richness of intellectual property and navigating the Office of Technology Transfer as an inventor from an academic setting. Now, we're going to cover how do you successfully pitch to OTT for your patent application. We're going to talk about how you write an invention disclosure and do that successfully, which is your first pitch document to OTT. And then we're going to talk about how to negotiate that license agreement or that option should you choose to go that path. I'm also going to hit up on some great tips on why is intellectual property good from a perspective of recruiting investors, selling more products, having a great competitive advantage. So we'll hit on a lot of different things, but we're going to do it in a short bit of time. So let's get into it. The first thing is, how do you successfully pitch to OTT? All right, the Office of Technology Transfer at your university. And to do that, you first need to determine two things. Is your invention patentable, and can you commercialize it? OTT cares about both of those things. They're an investor in your technology, right? They're making an investment deal in it. They're going to file and pay for those upfront patent fees, but they need to know they can get that money back, at least break even, and hopefully even do better than that. Make money off of the engagement in the deal. Okay, we make patents because we're trying to make money. That's across the board. They're not publications, because it's not just about dissemination of information. That happens in a journal publication. That happens in a talk. Patents are about protecting something you want to make money on. So that being said, perhaps you're in a place right now, because you're watching this video, where you have an invention and you're wondering, is it patentable? Should I even approach the Office of Technology Transfer? Here are some things that you need to determine before you can do that. Number one, is it something that actually can be created? Okay, is it going to be used in the real world? Is it not just theory or hypothetical? Well, along with that, can you draw this out? Okay? Can you do drawings? Can you describe this technology? That will be super critical in the patent application. Of course, we all know that if it's a patent, I want it to be novel. But what you might not know is it also needs to be non-obvious. In other words, it can't just be an iteration on something that already exists that is quite obvious to the patent reviewer and to anybody that sat still long enough to think about a solution. An example would be, hey, I'm trying to make a chair for clowns on stilts, and I want to file a patent for a 12-foot tall chair. Well, they're going to say, I get that clowns on stilts and sitting down might be novel, but anybody could sit still long enough could think, I'll just make a really tall chair. So it's got to be both novel and non-obvious. The next thing is, you got to do your research to make sure that patents don't already exist in this area. To do that, we'd research what you call prior art. So you're going to research other patents, you're going to research publications even to make sure it's not in the public domain. If something's already in the public domain and publicly disclosed, it can't be patented, which is a good time for me to mention this. If you're about to publicly disclose your invention, make a beeline to the Office of Technology Transfer. What I'm saying is, if you publicly disclose it, you cannot file a patent later. So you want to get on all the tips that I'm going to give you in this presentation ASAP, and give yourself time to structure your invention disclosure, which we'll talk about ways to do that. Get to the Office of Technology Transfer, make your pitch to them. Hopefully they agree and they'll file a provisional patent, and that will buy you some time, a year's time, to decide if you want to do the full one, or for them to decide that. Now, when you're researching, don't just look at US patents, look at patents across the world, internationally filed patents, because you might want to file your patents in other countries, and you might want to use your technology in other countries. So that becomes important. Google is your friend. Google Scholar, Google Patent, I love them. You're probably already using Google Scholar. Check out Google Patents if you haven't already. Excellent resource. And then consider alternate names for the invention. Don't just look up names for what you write your journal publications on. In other words, I was creating a microelectrode array. So all my journal publications, and in my field, we call them microelectrode arrays. Turns out, in other fields, they call them neurostimulators, neuroprosthetics, brain-machine interfaces, nerve stimulators, and it goes on and on and on. I had to look up each of those names as I was trying to figure out, did somebody already patent this? Also, basic things like, I'm trying to patent a curlable microelectrode array. Well, someone might call it a foldable someone else might call it a bendable microelectrode array. Somebody might call it a rollable. So it's not just a primary name of the technology and what the field calls it. Even those adjectives need to be looked at from different naming angles, just to make sure you don't miss anything. You're not a patent attorney. You don't have to get super in depth here. You're just trying to scratch the surface to make a very basic case of OTT, who will then later go back and do the deep digging. But you just need to make a case. Don't, pitch it to them and within less than 60 seconds, they find out, oh man, they've patented this all over the place, right? In other words, every version of this has already been patented. So you want to make sure you do some light searching, and they're going to expect to see some cited references to show that you've done that. So let's say it's patentable, and we figured that out in terms of the best of our abilities. All right, we just made our best case. Now, can you commercialize it? I'm going to spend a lot more time on this because this is a part that you probably haven't learned as much through your academic research experiences. What makes something commercializable? How do I pitch this to OTT as something that can be commercialized? What do they care about? And ultimately, whatever they care about is what investors care about. Any investor will care about this, and you also care about it. Even if you're not going to found your own company, right? Start your own company, you still want to have the opportunity to make some royalty payments off this invention. Only way that happens is if somebody picks it up and sells something with it. So you want to look at the market opportunity. Can somebody buy it? How many people can buy it? Think about the different applications that can be built with the technology. Think about, can it be manufactured? This is so key, something that a lot of academics miss out on. You might be patenting something with a whole set of materials and a whole process flow that could only be made in one-offs in the lab. You don't want to do that. You want to think about, what would I have to do to manufacture this at scale? And I want to make sure I have claims in my patent that cover that process. Also, that really plays into whether it can be commercialized. If you can't manufacture it at scale, you can't make money at scale, it cannot be commercialized. How big is the market opportunity, and do I have what I need to capture it? It all goes back to manufacturing and researching, what is the profitability that can come from these patents. OTT is not making a donation, they're making an investment. So you need to pitch to them. Is it likely to be commercialized? What are the pathways to get it there? What are the specific customer segments that might pick it up, and want to buy this technology in the marketplace? And if you can talk to potential customers, you can build an even stronger case of OTT to yourself and to any potential company that comes down the road that might want to license the technology. So as a recap, you want to see if it's patentable by researching the prior art, and you also want to determine if there is a marketable commercialization potential. So you want to look at the market, the size of the market. We're going to dig deeper into this as we discuss the invention disclosure. Invention disclosure is your written pitch to offer the technology transfer. It's also where you give them information to help them do their job, their due diligence, to see if this can be patented. And later on, the very information you put in the invention disclosure will be the starting point for structuring out the written language of the patent. So include pictures of your technology. Remember, it has to be describable. Include background, prior art from the technology. And you want to make sure that as you're pitching it, that it's novel, not just the patentability, but it can create a novel product. And you want to pitch the commercial demand and viability. I keep using that word pitch because it is a pitch. It's your first pitch. They're your first investor, perhaps. And it's a great opportunity to get some early investment in your company. If you found it, it's also a great opportunity to get somebody to invest in what could potentially be a royalty payment opportunity for you as an inventor, even if you never create your own company. So what do you write in this? Well, you want to make the case for patentability, as we talked about. You want to make the case for it's novel in the marketplace, right? So can it be commercialized? Only way that happens, it's got to be novel, not just as an invention, but in the marketplace. And you want to describe the size of the market and include any potential customers. Letters of interest from potential customers would be wonderful. That would really go a long way to helping the OTT determine if this is a good investment for them. And those same letters can be used for investors later on or in pitch competitions, in SBIR grant applications. So get a head start. The sooner the better. No sense in doing things twice. If you're gonna research the opportunity and talk to potential customers, go ahead and follow it all the way through. Get a letter if you can. I mean, it's excellent. Now, you wanna demonstrate profitability if that's what you're trying, and that's one thing you're trying to do when you talk about, can it be commercialized? So, is it going to be commercialized by a startup you create? Okay, that's a founder-led startup. Is it going to be commercialized by just kind of getting together a list of corporate entities that might want to license it? Okay, that's another way for OTT to make their money back and get interest on it, and for you to also get money in the process, right? And the other thing is you could attract a team of students or a team of founders that have an idea for wanting to do a business, but they don't have any intellectual property. They might pick up your invention and form a whole company around it. It happens all the time. So many opportunities to profit as an inventor and to make the case to OTT that they can profit if they actually file the patent, right? So key to commercialization is identifying pathways to products. We're not just talking about blanket application spaces. You need to think down to how will this turn into a product? Give you an example. Maybe you have an excellent chemical formulation that can be used to create stronger rubber. Well, stronger rubber by itself is not a product. But you have to think, well, what will we use this in? What will the end product be? Maybe it'll be tires, okay? Maybe it'll be rubber that people can mold and cast with. You have to think about the end product, how it will be packaged, how it will be delivered, and preferably multiple end products, because you never know what will hit. So even if you create your own startup, you want to have multiple product ideas from the same invention. And certainly OTT wants to have multiple companies that they can go to pitch this to, so they can increase their opportunities to get somebody to latch on, license it, and they can make some profit off of it, you as well, right? Can it be manufactured? Super key. You don't want to make an invention that can only be manufactured in the lab in small quantities. Going back to the chemical formulation for rubber, if it can only be manufactured in small quantities in a beaker, it'll never suffice for the tire industry. So think about the materials, think about the tools. Can they be scaled up? Super, super key, especially when you think about invention. My personal experience, I invented a technology. I had a whole set of patent applications when I was at the university. And I had to create a whole new set of patent applications because I had to generate new intellectual property. Turns out the tools and materials I was using could not be scaled up in the industry I was wanting to use it at. So I had to, in a sense, start from scratch. This is incredibly common in the academic space. So take the time and think about scale. Is there existing manufacturing facility where you can transfer the technology? Can you build your own? Do the tool sets exist? Provide examples of multiple commercial pathways. Include value propositions. What will be the selling points for this? Why would customers want to purchase it? Is it improve outcomes, right, in terms of disease? Is it higher performing? Does it improve access to emerging economies? Is the price point really great? These are all wonderful ways to demonstrate value to the end user, the paying customer. Now, in addition to value, you want to demonstrate demand. Is there going to be demand for this? What am I saying? Listen, I might be making a cure for a very rare type of cancer where there's only 100 people that get it a year across the world. Has great value proposition. What is better than being able to save someone's life? Unfortunately, the demand is so little, you will have a very hard time forming a for-profit entity with this. Don't get discouraged. There's other opportunities for that. I'm not going to discuss that too much in this video, but you can go to foundations and you can make it happen other ways. But for what we're talking about here, Office of Technology Transfer needs to license this to another entity. And so it might be an excellent invention, very patentable, but the demand isn't there. What can you do? Think about, is there any use beyond that niche cancer treatment area where you could use the same formulation? That is how you can get around that issue. So think about that. Think about corporate, interest in this technology, right? Demonstrate to OTT that other people will kind of sign on with them and invest this in the long run. They're just filing the patent. You're going to eventually need to raise money. You're eventually going to need to sell this, have partnerships. Are there startups that want to use the technology? Any letters you can get, as I mentioned before, will be super key. Now, to cover this, just a highlight of this, we talked about demonstrating patentability, demonstrating demand, showing that there's products that can be produced and pathways to profit, and we talked about including multiple market opportunities. Variety is king when you're pitching to OTT. Now, the last thing I'm going to cover is negotiating intellectual property license agreements. So let's say you are going to start your own company, right? I'm going to do my startup. you're going to need access to that intellectual property that OTT owns. You're going to need to make a case to them, right, that you want a very favorable deal in terms on licensing this technology. Another way for saying that is negotiation. So here I'm going to cover how to determine if the license agreement is in your future, how to determine the best time to execute an option, which is the first stage of that. I'll get into the definition of options shortly, and then critical terms in the end option agreement or license agreement for a startup that you should be thinking about as a potential startup founder. Now, the reasons to license the technology, again, are you going to build a startup? So am I thinking about it? If I'm thinking about it, heaven forbid, you don't get an option. And an option agreement is basically, it's like putting a hold on the technology. It's like saying to OTT, hey, I'll pay you some money or we'll exchange some value. You'll give me a contract that says, I have first right of refusal to licensing this. So you won't shop it around to anybody else. If anybody else comes and asks you about it, you have to tell them, hey, can't give it to you. I got to check with them first. That protects the opportunity for you. So something to consider getting an option agreement if that's the case. If you've already created a startup, you certainly want an option agreement. If you have invested your time, effort, and energy to create a startup and is founded off of that intellectual property, you most definitely need an option agreement. You need to have rights, and every investor that you come across will expect you to have rights to get access to the ownership, right? Not ownership, but a license agreement on that. They're gonna wanna make sure you protected that and that they don't invest their money in you and they turn around and somebody else got that already from the university and you have no rights. Then, outside of an option, the next stage would be, well, I put a hold on it and now I'm pretty sure I'm ready, I want to enter into a license agreement. You would only do that if you're looking to sell in the near future. Okay, so the time to execute a license agreement is when I'm looking, I'm sure I see a sale down the road for me. I see a commercial opportunity coming down the road. Now I'm going to execute a license agreement. Keep in mind some things. When you are signing this option, right, and you're thinking about the best time to sign the option agreement, again, that's the hold, the opportunity to license in the future. It's not the license agreement. Think about this. You're going to have to start paying the patent fees in some cases the moment you sign that. Now, if you can negotiate out of that, please do, right? But you may have to pay that the moment you sign it. So you want to know, do I have a budget for that? You also may have to consider the fact that you'll have to pay some upfront costs. So you're going to want to think about that. So the times to execute an option is when you're about to perhaps launch a fundraising campaign. The time to execute a license agreement, right, could also be launching a fundraising campaign, looking to sign a sales contract. Can't do any sales without the license. And also think about OTT time requirements. Your Office of Technology Transfer might say, hey, we want to be able to market this around. We spend our money. We want to be able to pitch it to companies. So you will need to decide within a certain time frame whether you want to execute an option or not. And we will hold off from pitching it until you make that decision. So there's some time frame considerations straight from OTT. Here are things to consider with an option and with a license agreement. Now with an option, again, usually it's just an upfront cost. Maybe you're not, right? These are all negotiable. You may have to start paying the patent fees right away. Negotiable as well. The length of the option, does it have renewal periods, things like that. Those are things you want to consider with an option, right? When it comes to a license, it's more involved. There's going to be royalty payments. There might be upfront costs. You're still going to have to pay for the maintenance fees on the patents and the filing fees if there's additional filing. In other words, if it's not an approved patent yet. And keep in mind, it's all negotiable. Bring your lawyer to the table. I'm sure OTT would even welcome that, right? You need to have somebody on your side. They have somebody on their side. And the more times that you have a case where both sides have representation, it just cuts back on a lot of confusion. So certainly as a founder, you want to make sure that you're cross-checking this with your own legal help, okay? Don't just try and negotiate it on your own. You need someone to help you look at that contract and make sure you understand everything you're signing off on. Keep in mind, you're negotiating for your business, not for yourself. This is not you signing this option. This is you signing on behalf of the business. So you have to keep the business interest in mind. If the business doesn't have the budget to pay for patent fees, you need to be negotiating very seriously to not have to pay those patent fees when you sign the option agreement. If the business doesn't have the budget for a large upfront cost, you need to try and negotiate that away when you sign the option agreement. Investors want a very good license agreement from the university. They don't want to deal with a lot of complexities. They don't want to deal with a lot of huge equity stakes being gone, things like that. Universities don't take a lot usually, but just keep that in mind. Investors also want you to have made the best deal on behalf of the company. You may not have any investors right now and you're thinking about doing a license agreement. Trust me, you will hopefully have some, and they will pass on you if you have a bad license agreement with your Office of Technology Transfer. So that's why it's so critical. Ask around, have someone review it. We often help people with this in Visionarium too. Now, just to summarize, you are going to choose the right time to enter into an option. You're going to know what you want, and you're going to negotiate, okay? So don't go into that just blank space, right? Go in knowing what you want and go in knowing that you can negotiate, right? This is a negotiation. So key takeaways from this presentation, I hope that you have enjoyed it, knowing what makes a good patent application, knowing what makes it commercializable, right? How to pitch that opportunity to OTT, negotiating and preparing for an option agreement or for a license agreement with OTT. I hope you've learned a lot. If you want to get other information from Visionarium, you have the links that you can see on this presentation where you can check us out. You can follow us on our social media channels. We offer lots of free business tips, particularly to early stage entrepreneurs. Very passionate about academics, so you can find lots of information there. If you want to connect further with us, you can go to the website. Here are also some tips that I'm including as part of this presentation for how you can research the background of patents and make sure that you're searching properly for prior art. USPTO has lots of links and opportunities, and who better to learn from than the people you're actually gonna have to get it through. So make sure you check out these links. Make sure you get excited, passionate, and get motivated to think about the commercialization opportunities for your IP, because as an inventor, as a founder, maybe one day, that is what will matter the most to you, right? It's not just about the money, but you can't get your technology into the world if you can't get it into the marketplace, okay? So the money is the way that you get it there, right? That's why OTT is seeing this as an investment opportunity. They as well need to have a financial return so that they can file more and more patents. So everybody around is thinking about the money because it enables them to make the impact that they need to make. So you think about it as well. And I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Hope you continue to check out the curriculum series. And as we say at Visionarium, stay vision rich.